What this? Oh Jesus! Wow.
Me?
That sounded dramatic.
I know. Jesus. I need to get software that
That
talks to me
yeah,
with an authoritative
that
voice.
that guy might also have had a ketamine infusion yesterday.
Yeah, seriously, you can hear it in his voice.
Alright, let's see if this thing works.
Okay. So, I guess it works now. Thank you, Ether Fox. Um.
Anyone still here?
Oh wait, Windows key G. I know it's very quiet. Have we noticed that?
We're here.
Oh shit!
Hello?
Speaker system sounds. When
Oh
this
yeah, there's the
changes
Craig
my
thing. Yeah.
what?
There's the Craig thing that's recording. That's what they were talking about. The Craig thing.
Okay. All I know is recording has started, and it's got a creepy little beaver face.
Yeah, that's the
Um.
Craig thing that they were talking about
All right.
earlier.
I'm terrified. Okay.
It's
Moving
not.
on. Moving on. So this paper is about human magnetic sense in the eyeballs. Um, and this came about because Diego and I were talking the other day, and I don't know, like maybe a bazillion years ago, I mentioned some sort of interest in the magnetic field mechanisms that a lot of animals seem to have that seems to be lacking in humans. So there had been
Oh,
some conversation about how to do this because evidently putting things in your eyes is what I'm known for, and therefore like when somebody's like, "Hey, can you put this chemical in your eyeball?" people ask me. So, at least I'm good for something here. Um so so then I found this paper, and it turns out that human beings already have magnetic sensing in their eyes. And while it is light dependent, it is not purely light dependent, which means that your eyeballs kind of act like 360-degree magnetic sensing spheres that are inside of your head. And evidently, we're just so freaking used to this sense existing in a very subtle and low level way that we don't really know a whole bunch about it. And like, there's no conscious, like, you can't feel it turning on and off for whatever. I don't know. It's strange. Like, I'm still trying to figure out what it would feel like to feel magnetic sensations and then realize that I can, evidently. I just don't know what the feeling is. Does anyone get what I'm saying about like how confusing this concept is?
uh-huh.
Okay. Um so uh as you get into the paper, they do an excellent job of taking what is actually like they did a significant amount of double blinding, negative controls. Like, this was a very well thought out experiment, which is great. And it really needs to be like making claims about something that we would call alternative uses for our pre-existing organs that are also pre-existing uses is something very difficult to define, and it would be really easy to make it sound like bias. So this they really put some effort into it. Um, you will notice that the like I'm sorry, this is gonna get so weird. Okay, so you will notice that the uh the paper says that the sentence here, we demonstrate that a magnetic field resonance mechanism mediates light dependent magnetic orientation in men. So does anyone want to make a guess about why this paper is only talking about men? Jasmine already knows the answer, so she doesn't get to say anything, and I'm not moving forward until I hear some guesses.
I am saying something. It's the patriarchy. That's
Oh,
why.
That they
what?
only thrives on men.
It's the patriarchy. That's why. No, that's not the answer, Gabriel.
Thank you for the comedic relief, Jasmine.
My guess is it has something to do with the chromosomes.
That is incorrect. And they, the way the paper is written,
Dark
Mika,
then is
the way that the paper is, okay, nobody gets to read ahead for this. The way that the paper is written, it's not because they didn't test it in females. It's not because they didn't have a female control group. It's because they got their best data with this very, yes, starving men. See, now you're reading ahead. So, and that's part of it. That's part of the way that the the way that they did such an excellent job with their different controls is that starvation is one of their controls. Um, so it turns out that in this particular instance, um, men have a noticeably better sense of direction, and so this is where they ended up getting their data from because it had the strongest impact. Um, so yeah, that's what happened.
interesting.
And that's what happened here. This is a scientific paper showing evidence that actually men don't need to have certain infections. It's so fucking sorry.
Getting canceled in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, no, I know it's so funny. Because it's so ridiculous. Actually, what it is that the ability seems to be connected to basal metabolic rate, which is just on average higher in the male of the species of the population. This is also another reason why they were doing starvation controls to see how much, because there's two types of mechanisms in biology. There's the mechanism where it's absolutely important the thing doesn't work without it, right? Like you can't have C without B. And then there's the mechanism that's like, well, if you remove B, you get C, but it's like a lowercase c. You don't get a capital C. Does this make sense to people?
Yes.
Yeah,
This
it's
concept
yeah.
of like crucial elements of a process versus helpful elements of a process. Um, so it turns out that the basal metabolic level um, seems to affect the situation, but it's not the only or most dominant thing that is affecting the situation. So it's part of the mechanism, but it's not crucial. It just happens to be this way. And you can really check how people's metabolic activities are affecting processes in the bodies by just not giving them any food and then seeing if they're still capable of doing the thing they were capable before of, right? Like if food is important, you definitely test for food. Um, and then they were also testing for magnetic field and like uh light, and while it sounds like they're just like, okay, well, are they just looking around and making the decision? And that's how all this works. So let's get into it here before I just kind of like casually talk about the entire paper without looking at it. Okay, so the first part, they just explain a whole bunch about um uh these different mechanisms, like how they work in various organisms. And I actually didn't know that there was biogenic magnetite in the ethnoid bone of a salmon. And I think, oh wait, no, the magnetite in bacteria. I didn't know that the ethmoid bone of the salmon had magnetic sensing capabilities. So that was pretty cool just to begin with, and it makes sense. So it turns out, like if you look at this, it turns out that there's a whole bunch of species that use this kind of sensing and a little bit of um, like convergent evolution. Different mechanisms that allow for the same ability. But it's kind of turning into one of those things like being UV responsive. Was anyone around for a conversation about platypus and how, like, yes, it's common in migratory species, salmon, birds, but it's also common in like foxes and dogs and insects and snakes and stuff like that. So it's not
Well,
just a migratory species. Um, where was I? I was in the middle of a sentence and then I got I see. This is why I don't look at voice and video. I'm not an amazing streamer. I can't do it. So, yeah. let me screw my brain back on. Wow. This is what sleep does depth does to you people. Don't do it. All right. So, um, one of the most interesting things is while I was looking this up, I ended up finding some other papers about this magnetoreception because the primary one that I know about is actually the biogenic method, which is where like they also think that racing pigeons have this bacteria that's in their pigeon version of sinuses that deposits biogenic magnetite, and that has something to do with it. And then they also found that robins have a non-light dependent mechanism, which makes sense because if it was a light dependent mechanism, like a truly light dependent mechanism, everything would get lost at night. And like birds wouldn't be able to navigate because it's too dark. And since they can still fly around, like we've all seen a bird at night, right? It's a thing. You can't just have half of the day where you're completely blind, right? Everyone, anyone? You guys are very quiet today.
You
Birds do
understand
fly
the
at night.
magnetics.
Not me. I'm listening. You want me
Yeah,
to
that's
talk?
true. That's true. You are very, very chatty. In terms of how they benefit, uh, this actually has the same type of answer as why people implant magnets. It turns out that it really is just kind of a casual catch-all extra layer of sensation, and um they're really good at it too. So I mean, it's like if I could hear better or like smell better, I would engage in the act of smelling more effectively. I already smell good. Um, uh, then yeah, and a whole bunch of them happen. Okay, so um, okay, and this is my number one favorite part of this paper, and I kid you not. They're calling it a canonical inclination. So they're not like they we've gotten to the point where they're not even calling things like they're not, usually 10 years ago this would have been called a novel mechanism, right? That's how you get your impact. But now everybody uses the word novel, and so they have a non-canonical inclination effect, which means previously undiscussed and potentially outside of what the literature says. So basically, these people are like, "Hey, we got into some geomagnetic field slash fic, and it turns out that the writing is really good." And I like that.
Yeah, exactly. And let's do more of this.
Science slash fic go. Human
Yeah,
beings see with their eyes.
let's
Okay,
go.
so I don't know if this is just a new thing or what, but like they do the intro and then they go straight to the results. I don't know why. So oh, we can't really skip the results. They put everything in the results. Okay, so I'm gonna try to explain this in the not in the order that the paper is in, because it doesn't make sense to talk about the results before you explain your mechanism. And that's way down on page, what page am I on? 7? Yeah, 7 or something like that. Oh God, oh, and then I hit a reference. Okay, anyway, so what are the things they tested for? They tested for starvation. They were like, how does having or not having food affect this? After they got some data on that, they started looking into metabolic rates, and that seemed to be an element that was involved. Um, and so, like when I first started reading the paper, I was like, "Oh, light sensitivity, like that makes sense." Like when you're looking at, you know, when you're looking at something, you have better orientation. And when there's light, you can do it better. So it makes sense in my head for that to be tested against. But no, these guys knew something else. Um, they they're talking about how light is actually crucial for magnetic orientation. And when they say light, of course they mean it scientifically, not in the uh ha, in the canonical way that we talk about it. Um, so what happens is it's actually controlled by blue and red wavelengths. So this is a crucial element. It's a combination of many things, but blue and red light actually really, really matter. And so what they found is they got a, significant change when they changed the wavelengths. So when you moved, when they shifted all the light into the red, they had a lot of red light. Um, and and remember, this means that everything's in a certain wavelength area. It's not just about like perceptual color. Um, and red light seems to inhibit the magnetic sensing, and blue light seems to increase the magnetic sensing. So just depending on, well, this would be like the time of day, for instance. You will have different levels. And how they were testing all of this, it really, again, just a clever setup. They had a room and they had a chair on a swivel. Um, and you couldn't tell which direction the room was in. Like it was all just normalized to be a cube or as much of a cube as possible. And then, um, and then they had all of these devices, like they could change the light frequencies. And then they also had a magnetic field generator. And so this is really cool too. So this meant that you basically set someone in the room, you turn the lights on like normal, right? Because you only want to change one variable at a time. And then they like crank on this generator that makes it feel like there's a like if you could actually see like the movements, there's a giant magnetic field over here. So it's going to be like noise, right? This is our fake north. They basically took the magnetic field that true north gets or magnetic north gives off, and they duplicated it in a device that they can put in other places. Does that make sense?
No. Can you help me?
Why not?
I don't.
Uh, okay, so magnetic north is a place or is a direction, and it's based off of the geomagnetic field of the planet. And so if
Mhm.
you can sense which direction north is based off of the geomagnetic field as opposed to your vision, you're going to feel that somehow. It's going to be
Okay.
subconscious, evidently. So if
Oh,
you put
okay.
another field in the mix, it's going to confuse which direction is north. to this thing, just in the way that, like, if I was in a forest and I'm walking towards a light at the end of a trail, and then I look to the side and I see another light, this is how people get lost in the woods, right? Like will-o-wisps
Not
and stuff.
sure magnetic fields work like this.
Say what?
Not sure magnetic fields work like this. Like the fields should add up, so the compass will just rotate.
Right, the compass will rotate. Exactly. It's a signal to noise thing that they're testing here. Like if
Okay, so
you
you're saying this isn't pseudoscience. Our brains just somehow, we don't know how because we just don't understand the brain enough.
Yeah,
But
this whole
this,
paper is about trying to figure out the mechanism, and it falls on that. It falls flat.
okay, got it. Got it. Okay.
That's not because it was bad science. It's because it's
Yeah.
just too complex and we don't understand it yet.
Okay. Okay. Now, so I understand that it's because we don't understand. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Because we don't understand. So we have to try all these different things that basically, we're like,
Hmm.
okay, if it's based on metabolic rate, what happens? Then we should see an effect when we don't give them food, right?
Do we
Because
know how the
eating
mechanism
definitely
works in
affects your
birds?
metabolic rate. What?
Do we know how the mechanism works in birds?
There's a couple of mechanisms, and we know like half of how it works. But at the end of the day, we're basically trying to reverse engineer how an organ that, for all intents and purposes, isn't perceptible to our conscious mind, and we're trying to figure out how that thing works in other animals that seem to have that ability much better than we do. And it's very difficult to describe a thing you can't see. You can like describe the outline of it, but you can't actually describe the thing because you can't see it. And so like there's a little it's difficult. It's very difficult, but we kind of know it. But at the end it always ends up in this thing where they're like, and then they perceive this thing. And we can tell that the thing is being perceived because of all these other ways that could be bogus, and it's not. But we still don't know why or how. And so they're building pieces, and so that's what this paper is. This paper is about building pieces to see a thing that we have a blind spot for, basically. It's one of those things where it's so fundamentally integrated that it makes it difficult to describe. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
Hmm.
All right. So, yeah, so they tested the wavelengths of light, and it turns out that blue light actually increases your superpowers, and red light decreases them. So, jokes on you, everyone who said I needed to turn my screen off at night. I'm charging up my superpowers. Um, and
But
then
you
the
need
other
them at night.
what?
Why would you need them at night when you need to sleep?
I need them all the time. How do you know that my like I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm being
I
flippant.
wonder if
He
it has
also
something to do
hasn't
with.
slept.
Yeah, that's true. I've got like 3 hours on me in the last 5 days, so let's just take it easy here.
So apparently you don't need it to sleep. Your superpower is to do it to not sleep.
No, I don't know. Let's not talk about it. It's kind of depressing, in all honesty. I'm just happy that I'm coherent, though my memory is a little slippery right now. Okay, so what it was is they basically spun you around in the chair, and then you sat in the chair, and then you needed to scoot your way so that you were oriented um against the like so that you were facing where you thought true magnetic north was. Um and and they had all of these different effects that changed it. Um and so they're like, "Oh, hey, we noticed that this wavelength thing, this seems to be the same type of magnetic orientation uh reaction that newts and fruit flies have. So that That's interesting, and it means that at least we can start to observe it somewhere else. But again, we still don't really know how. We just know it does. Um, Down here in figure figure one, you basically see the a lot of graphs that almost look the same. Um, but what these like depending on which graph you're looking at, um, like so the first one is actually the test. Like here's the ambient magnetic north. Here's like the artificial magnetic north. That little circle is the guy in the swivel chair. Um, and then they found out that there's a range. It's about 74 degrees, and it's like 74 degrees in front of you, and that's where like your primary magnetic field of vision is, which makes sense since we've seen that there are already previously existing light dependent mechanisms, wavelength dependent mechanisms. But what's the other thing that you get when you're looking at things with non-visible wavelengths? Anyone? So like we're talking about X-rays, we're talking about MRIs. What is a phrase, what is a complication that anyone has heard about looking at an X-ray or looking at an MRI? So people who have been to the hospital a lot, I'm looking for your input. But if anybody else knows, just go for it.
The eyeballs light up.
No, the eyeballs do not light up.
I guess I'm confused by what you're asking. You're saying
Okay,
don't.
so we have an organ, which evidently is our
Yeah.
eyeballs, that
Yeah.
can sense magnetic fields, and it is
Yeah.
partially dependent on light.
Yeah.
But we all know that magnetic fields are not light, and
Yeah.
so it does mean that it is also working on some other thing. And so why is there a 74-degree field in front of you if it's not purely dependent on light? Why is the front better? This is
Oh,
going to be
that's
such a
that's a
simple
great question.
this is going to be such a simple answer that there's going to be a lot of like hand to the
Huh.
foreheads here.
Most
Anyone,
things
come on, throw some guesses out here, people.
things
Pretty
in
sure
front of
something fluoresces.
no, things in front of you are more important than things behind you as a human.
Okay, but so are you saying that the sensors are arrayed towards the front? Or are things more important in the front due to the bias that that's where our eyeballs are?
Yeah, pretty much. If it's that's where our eyeballs are. So if it's to do with our eyeballs, it would probably be dependent on our eyeballs, which are at the front of our face.
All right. Well, that is basically the range of wrong answers that we could possibly have. So it's actually way cooler than this. So magnetic waves travel through materials, which means that if you had a magnetic wave sensing organism, your eyeballs would actually act like three 360-degree spherical magnetic sensors, right? But your head is in the way. And so you get a shadow. Like when you're taking an X-ray and there's like something blocking the rays, and so they're like, "Oh, there's a shadow on this X-ray." Or when you get an MRI and they see something that looks like can't, they're like, "Oh, there's a little shadow here. That's you're gonna need to we're gonna have to do some more tests now." So it turns out that your skull just kind of blocks some of the magnetic sensing. And so 74 degrees is basically the part of your eyeball that isn't covered by a big mass of brain and body organ meat and bone, which is cool, right?
Basically, you're trying to say that people are denser than dirt.
Say what?
People are denser than dirt, i.e., the
People are
spill from the.
denser than dirt. That's true. But also we have like a lot of liquid in us too, and that fucks with electromagnetic frequencies as well.
How the hell can a skull block geomagnetic field? Like a quasi-DC magnetic field isn't blocked by most
I
matter.
mean, if you get an MRI, that's magnetic resonance, and your body, and the reason we can see different things in an MRI is because they have different levels of like energy absorbance, or I don't. That's not the right term. Um,
It vibrates.
it vibrates,
And
and it
like
vibrates, and it
the
vibrates
geomagnetic field
differently.
does not vibrate. For an
Right, but
MRI, you
your
need
body
to
does.
change the intensity of the magnetic field in order to get the things to like snap and ring.
Right. Okay, it's not a perfect analogy. Again, they're finding out these things, but they don't know how to properly explain it because we still don't know
Like
why.
blocking the Earth's magnetic field is
It's
an
not
active
blocking it.
process.
It's not blocking it. It's just creating a shadow. It means that we have a better focus on things that aren't occluded, which makes
The
sense.
reason why you need to actively cancel Earth's magnetic field is because shielding it is not a thing. It's way too massive to shield.
Okay, now I gotta find find this thing that talks about the degrees because like you have to understand I just got excited about this paper. Okay, let's see. And increased for the 74-degree angle, in, indicating a differential effect on the anisotropic receptor. Oh gosh, all that means is it has a physical property that has a different value
1.2
when measured in
megahertz
different.
is different from geomagnetic field.
Say what?
1.2 megahertz and geomagnetic field are two completely different things.
Uh, where did you get that?
Page 6,
Page
figure
6.
3.
Well, a radio wave is going to be different than a stationary magnetic field with no change in magnitude.
Um. Hmm. Yes. Okay. So they were oscillating magnetic fields for that. That's true. Huh. So that kind of makes that data useless, doesn't it?
Are they trying to introduce noise?
Yeah, they were trying to introduce noise. So and that's the thing. If it's picking up on noise, then it's picking up on something, right?
It
Like
seems like they would want
if
to
you can't
make a
sense a
stationary
if you can't sense
pulse.
a radio field, like there's radio waves in the air. My radio picks them up. If I don't have a radio, I can't hear the radio waves. So something is picking up non-light magnetic electromagnetic fields.
Do they ever make a fake stationary north?
Um, I, I didn't see that, but if somebody wants to double check, um, oh yeah, they even made sure they did it at the right time. Okay, so they have a modulated magnetic north. Yeah, so it's not all vibrating. So
Are they
page
like
8.
trying to disrupt the magnetic sensing by
Right,
using the noise?
they're trying to disrupt it with noise to show that something is there picking up the that's picking up frequencies, right? It's like if somebody says they're deaf and then a loud noise startles them, they heard the noise. So
Like they're
some
using a radio generator, a radio transmitter to disrupt sensing of a static magnetic field. That's not how you do things. Like you need to generate a static magnetic field of a similar magnitude as the geomagnetic field and like
Right,
try to move it around,
which
like
hang
what
on
they
a
did with
second. So
cows.
on page 8, is that also not a static magnetic field? Okay, so the different orientation of the radio frequency antenna produce different magnetic field intensities at the eyes of the subjects,
That's different
caused
from
by
a
the
magnetic
shadowing
field.
effects.
Radio wave and a magnetic field are two different things
Well,
for this point of use.
but it affects their ability to sense the magnetic field, okay? That's what it's doing. It's basically showing that there's something there. Because if you can disrupt its ability with something, it means that it's receiving something, right? It doesn't even have to be the same thing. Like
I mean, maybe,
it
but like,
no. If I say I can't hear and I'm moving through a situation and they say there's no sound that's helping me move through the situation, if you just turn on a lot of metal and all of a sudden I can't orient myself, then
yeah, but
that
like the
means
equivalent here is that they're flashing bright lights on someone who is orienting by hearing.
they're flashing bright lights on somebody that's orienting on non-flashing lights. Like again, we're both trying to make strong declarative statements about a mechanism that one we both don't understand, and two, it sounds like the people in this paper are still coming to terms with. So, like to make the distinction between different types of magnetic fields and actually, call them sound and make that analogy, it's actually a bad analogy, and that's my fault for starting it. But what they're saying is when you when you turn on a lot of or electromagnetic noise in a certain range, it makes it so that your normal magnetic sensing doesn't work as well, right? So whatever that may mean, it means that you don't it doesn't work. Something is there because you can disrupt it, right?
Sounds like further
It
study is needed.
Yeah, obviously
Yeah.
further study is needed. I told you that like they don't understand the mechanism. That was like I explicitly said that. And how this paper is all about seeing the outline of the thing, not the actual thing, because they don't know. And they're very comfortable saying they don't know. They're saying, here's what we do know. And one is that certain or certain radio frequencies disrupt your ability to sense north, which means, or disrupts these test subjects' ability, which means something's going on there, right? That's the whole point of this paper, is that something is going on there. It is very rare that you find a paper that actually explains a comprehensive mechanism. When those papers come out, they're a big deal. Most papers are like, here's a part.
Okay, and like I read it a little bit more, and they did actually try static magnetic fields.
Okay, good. I thought they did, but then I wasn't finding it, and so I wasn't going to make that declarative. So they did, and it affected things. Geomagnetic orientation array.
Modulation of GMF,
Yep.
page 8.
Yeah, I said page 8 to begin with. I said modulated geomagnetic field. And then everyone's like, "Oh no, that's just vibrating, not the
Now,
same."
because like
I,
there were other experiments there as well. It's
yeah.
just
Anyway, I said page 8, and the data is there. Good. So we're moving on.
all right.
um. So. So yeah, basically now we're on page 8. In all honesty, the graphics in this paper are subpar in my opinion, but the experimental design, I haven't seen such a great experimental design on something so weird in a long time. It's very good. Um, and so, I mean, I think I need some questions to get back in the flow here because I mean, I could go through and explain or talk about all the different tests, but we've touched on the really big ones, which are starvation, um, uh, fake magnetic fields, different wavelengths. Basically, they're just running the gamut of all the different wavelengths. I bet they probably, if they could have gotten away with it, they would have fired X-rays at someone too, just to see what happens. I know I would have.
You were born
I
100 years too
X-rays.
late for that.
Yeah, right. Somebody said something. There was a question. Where you at?
Yes. What about magnets?
What about magnets?
So if you're considering high frequency radio waves, what about just different kinds of stationary magnetic fields?
Um, like outside of the frequency that we're
Not
talking
just
about.
like put a big magnet on your head.
Put a big magnet. Isn't that what the modified modulated
No, I
module
mean like a real magnet, not
like a
just
real magnet, like
changing the
a
magnetic field of the Earth, which is fairly weak.
right?
Or what if you
Um,
just put a bunch in your house at specific locations and try to navigate it in the dark? I don't know.
well, somebody else would have to put them in your house. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess they could just put it like I'm trying to think of what that would be. Oh, you could do it with. I mean, they didn't, as far as I saw, do that. But I guess if you would like, I don't know. So magnetic fields disrupt the. Sure, magnetic fields do that thing like on a normal magnet, but like I've sat around and watched people do the math on how strong a magnetic field is, and it's definitely a like distance from the magnet away from the magnet is definitely one of the primary factors on how we measure magnetic strength. Um, so you would need like a really big magnet.
Like an
Like
MRI.
I actually had to learn a lot about this because I was, working with people on developing the next generation of implantable magnets. And when you're dealing with people who are casual about self surgery, you sometimes run into some people that maybe need to get help from non hobbyists about things other than their magnetic field sensing. So you will run into people that are like, yeah, I implanted the magnet and now I can feel the subway running underneath the street, and that's just not freaking possible. The magnetic field of an implanted magnet barely makes it to the surface of your skin. That's why they have to be subdermal.
Unless
So,
something's
What the
vibrating
fuck?
nearby.
right, unless something, but it still needs to be like
I'm assuming you
field is a
implanted a
factor of,
neodymium magnet. Is that correct?
say what?
I'm assuming you implanted a neodymium magnet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So with
Ferromagnetics
the
talk, the strength is even lower. There's no way that you could put like the size of magnet you would need to be to interact with the field. So the Earth's geomagnetic field might be weak, but it's like big and pervasive.
that's where I was going with this question is the center of the Earth's magnetic field just a really high flux density, or does it broadcast over a wide range without being that much stronger?
It's just huge.
It's just
Like
huge.
it's the size of the Earth.
Right. Because like it's like the field is partially controlled by the fact that we have a molten core. And so you can consider that the magnet, and the field only comes off the magnet a little bit. So we bonk into it, but like the further you get away, the less magnetic field there is. That's why it's like a field as opposed to a dispersal or cloud. But yeah, I mean, that would just be really hard to test. You would need a magnet the size of a fucking VW bus.
Also known as an MRI machine.
Yeah, I guess you could probably, and then again, yeah. So that wasn't tested, but I think
Or
that's
figure
really
out how the birds do it and copy off of them.
well. So that's the thing. We're still working on that, and it turns out that some birds have different mechanisms. And so again, the convergent evolution thing is real here. Because yeah, we have some ideas on how birds do it. Like we know some of the factors that are involved, but we still don't know the mechanism. So these are just really awesome, cool data points, but they and they talk a little bit about how the mechanism might work, but they don't really they can't get to that. This is data. This is like pure research where they're just like, here's this stuff. It consistently acts this way. But yeah, more study is definitely needed.
I don't have the paper pulled up, but did they do any brain scanning while doing these tests?
Um, I don't think so. It's kind of you kind of have a problem here because the ways that we have for scanning brains uh, are generally use some sort of magnetic field.
Maybe do an EEG,
An
ECG.
EEG would just show excitation, and I think that the levels of excitation are so low and or integrated that it's going to look like a normal EEG because like you're using this ability technically all the time. It's ambiently on, like your skin, right? You don't like turn your skin on and off. It's involuntary and constant, the ability to sense, right? You can close your eyes, but your eyes are actually still like the only time your eyes do a cutout is when you're sleeping. But like, again, not something you can do on purpose. Though that would be cool if somebody learned some biofeedback techniques and managed to turn off their eyes on upon will. Um, so
Don't eyes turn off when you move your head? Like you never see the blur.
oh yeah, but that has more to do with the fact that we only like our eyes aren't as amazing as we think they are. Like we're only really picking up like, oh, I don't know, 20% of the visual data that's smacking into our face. Our brain just does a really amazing job of filling in the gaps. But like a significant amount of our like the reality that we see is um like filled in by the brain. That's a whole nother thing, but like eyes don't really work the way that we think they do. That's a different paper though. Um so yeah, so it means that it's on all the time. So if we were doing an EEG, it would just look like an EEG, right? It would be like, you know, like you wouldn't like if you were trying to do this for skin again, and they're like, well, how do we test it when it's turned off? It's like you don't. You like the skin doesn't have an off switch. More
Also, when you
questions?
mentioned blue light, that made me think that like sometimes when people are lost, they might look up at the sky. So I was wondering if there was any kind of correlation to that behavior or anything.
It's possible because it turns out that the angle of the frequency affects the perception. So yeah, moving your head around is going to help you try to line up with that angle. Remember, I was saying that 74-degree angle that that your body wants to get like the optimal magnetic field smacking into your face, which by the way is the inverse of a 90-degree like if you take a 90-degree angle and you subtract 74, you get the perfect angle for sitting in a chair that puts the least amount of stress on your spine. And I just find that being a very interesting coincidence. Nobody has any thoughts on that at all.
Sorry, can I hear that again?
Um,
Just find it.
yeah, the angle at which the frequency is smacking into your face, and I'm going to just keep calling it that because that's about as well as we understand how it works. Works best when you're at a 74-degree angle facing the magnetic field. And completely, I only know this because I just know random shit sometimes, but there was a study done, and it turns out that the ideal chair position is like 15 or 16 degrees because off of 90, um, which is the inverse of 74 degrees off of 90. So it just happens to also put the least amount of stress on your spine when you're in that position. Probably not connected, but it is an interesting like corollary.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Everybody's telling you to sit up straight in your chair, this is actually just big chair trying to take away your magnetic superpowers. So so the reason I got really excited about this paper, one, is because I love the concept of unexplored senses. Um, and this looks like the type of thing where you could engage in biofeedback and actually train this ability. So instead of like getting in there and messing with anything, or you know, my idea, which was like infecting the sinus cavity with the same organisms that are in homing pigeons, um, you could actually just learn to sense it more, like people who've gone blind and then actually learn how to sense with echolocation, which is something you can do even if you aren't blind. Um, and so the friend who had mentioned this whole concept, and that I had mentioned this concept and then forgot about it, he's in Bali, and he talks about these things called chicken sexers. Does anyone want to hazard a guess what a chicken sexer is?
They
Yeah, he's
tell
doing
you
his
if it's a bird or a male bird or a female bird. They squeeze the chicken.
And thank you for being the first answer and also not being perverted. So, yeah, and they basically, what they do is they have like these people that they line all the chickens up, and then the person like walks through, picks up the chicken, the baby chicken, and says female and sets it down. And then you have a more experienced chicken sexer who either reaffirms or says no, that's not correct. Um, and so they do this like thousands and thousands of times till they become like an expert chicken sexer. And then there's some sort of like, because they've been getting reinforcement that seems to be correct, they get to a point where they've trained themselves to basically just like baby chickens do not gender differentiate, or like sexually differentiate at that point. Like when you pick them up and you look at them, it's just like ball of fluff in a cloaca. There's not a whole lot of stuff going on there yet. So it's possible that you could, um, I don't know if they actually kill the chickens. Males are useless. Speak for yourself. They're great for soup. Um, and kind of crucial if you want to make more chickens.
But on an egg farm,
Well, I don't know. Hmm. There's a bad joke in there somewhere. I'm moving on. Anyway, yeah, so this is a theory that maybe we can actually learn more about the mechanism, and even if you just have a device that reinforces or tells you that that you're actually, I mean, because you're not guessing, you're sensing with un unexplored organ, kind of the same way that people have um like gut feelings, and then eventually we figured out that there's actually like a giant neural cluster at the base of our gut, and it's like when it's doing something it sends signals that we just misrepresent as like tummy twinges, but like there's actually something there, we just didn't understand it yet. um so it's kind of like that. Does anyone have any thoughts about this concept of training this mechanism?
Yeah, what about gut bacteria that are also iron fixing or iron utilizing?
Oh, yeah, I guess, I mean, that could be see, I we don't want an iron fixing bacteria. That
What's a
without
better word
especially
for bacteria that interact with magnetic material?
uh I don't know. Um the problem is that if you introduce an entire new organism to your microbiome, it's either going to die because there's not the things that it needs, or it's going to get all weird and out compete because it's not being, because you like made a new niche. Yeah, we're gonna scrub the word fixing, and we're gonna say iron utilizing. Possibly. I still like the concept of the infected sinuses, since that it seems like that's where all the action's already up here. Look, my magnetosensors are up here, sir. Um, yeah.
Can we have that on the t-shirt at least?
Yes, I'm making a note. We've got a couple of interesting T-shirt ideas that have come up in the last week or so. Um, so does as far as this can be understood, is everybody getting the gist here? Are there any more questions that possibly could be answered by the paper? Hello?
What is there anything that happens if they perfectly cancel it out rather than presenting it false?
Um, you know, I don't think so. Um, they I feel like I would have noticed that, but there was no point in the paper where they were like, doing this made it so that it was like it muted it. They don't ever talk about muting it. They just talk about shifting it or blocking it, which is different than muting, you
Is that
know?
something a spacefaring like astronauts would witness, or is it still too close?
Magnetic field extends very far.
Yeah, because the Earth is very far. Um, or big. The Earth is very far. Truer words, people, truer words.
Well, the center of the Earth is quite far.
Yeah, it is. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, like this falls under the category of like we know so little that we don't even know how it could be utilized, or or what the import of this is. This is for me, my opinion is that papers like this are right in the same category as when we discovered that like introns are actually coding. They're just not coding when you're looking at them, and so we've decided to just call them garbage. It really changes the field. So like kind of hard data about the possibility, or that shows evidence of a completely different ability to sense the world that is already pre-existing that we just didn't know about, or we only talk about in like colloquialisms and old wives' tales? You know, talking about how some people just have a better sense of direction, how, you know, like, all of this stuff. It's really it's really interesting.
Have any conclusions from the paper that can wrap up the findings?
I mean, the conclusion is kind of right. They didn't write a conclusion section to the paper. They just wrote a freaking um like a really long results section in the beginning. And I have accidentally scooted over to the robin. Robins are night migratory, right? So that's why they had the non-light activated mechanism. Yeah, so the takeaway is that human I mean, like, the fact that they just say human magnetic sense is mediated by blah 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 blah, like, that's a strong sentence right there, because it's already saying this is a thing. We're just figuring out how it's a thing. And that is the takeaway. The conclusion is that, like, it exists. It's connected to the actual sensations of the magnetic field of the Earth, but it's also affected by other wavelengths. I mean, not okay. So the reason that I got so excited about this, and I'm really surprised nobody else has jumped on this, like one of our more hyper talkers, is do you understand how quickly this could become like the world's coolest conspiracy theory? Because it's
Conspiracy
a
theory?
scientific paper that actually ties together a whole bunch of other random conspiracy theories.
Yeah, with radio waves and 5G. I think I see.
Radio wave. Oh yeah, I got that 5G screwing up my magnetic sensing. You know, turns out that my basal metabolic rate affects my ability to sense magnetic fields, and so by eating the standard American diet, I'm actually screwing with my powers. The government and the dark state are out there trying to take away our ability to perceive the world, thus keeping us more
Hey,
docile.
there's
Big
a
GPS
gender.
is
Yeah,
also in
you
on it
mentioned.
too.
Oh yeah. Oh wait, are you ready for it? Are you ready? It's not a true conspiracy theory without ancient aliens. So you know how those tribes in South America and like pre-colonial Mexico, like some of them would when the baby was born, they would press the heads between plates to shape the head into a different shape that was like elongated, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's because aliens, and they wanted to look like the aliens." All right. What if they were changing the shape of their head to alter the shadow that their skull provided so that they could increase their magnetic sensing abilities? The aliens came down and taught people how to change their head shape so they could use superpowers. Boom.
You know, I
Don't
like
forget to
that theory
drill
a
a
lot
hole in
more.
the skull.
Say what? Three people talked. What was that? Okay,
I was
maybe
gonna
I.
say I like the theory of the head squeezing to align the magnetic field
Oh,
lock.
yeah. Right. Right. And of course, since this is a large conspiracy, um, who has the most powerful, largest movie franchise uh, ever right now?
George Lucas?
Marvel. No, George Lucas is owned by Disney now. It's Marvel. Marvel has the largest. They have the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like and so if you're talking about superpowers, you can't not talk about the X-Men. And the X-Men is all about like equality and acceptance and people like acknowledging people who are different. All things that the alt right hate. And who is the bad guy in the X-Men? Magneto. That's right. Being powerful with magnet powers is something that the libs hate. They made him a villain in a movie about acceptance. This is liberal brainwashing 101.
To be fair, he had a lot of reasons to not like humans.
I know. It's just so funny to me because it sounds so crazy. I feel a little weird letting these words come out of my mouth because
You
it's
should probably
so
be selling this
batshit.
script.
Say what?
You should probably be selling this script. Get some funding out of it.
Actually, what I was talking with Nico about this, and we're thinking about actually making some really inexpensive but nice looking flyers with like our breakdown of this entire thing, and then secretly passing them out during DDW, like just kind of like putting them surreptitiously around like the convention place and stuff, and just because when you're at a design conference, you've got this weird mixture of people that are like that have like amazingly strong niche engineering skills, and then are just like completely clueless about anything outside of their field. And they're also prone to flights of fancy because they're artists, and because they're people. People are prone to flights of fancy. But it just seems like a good incubator to start making people crazy. Like the whole, oh yeah, and I guess that's also the other thing. We're just trying to pass it off as being like a normal thing that lots of animals have, but I think as we've all already learned, birds aren't real. So when somebody says birds can sense magnetic fields, they can't because birds don't exist. See, it works with every conspiracy theory.
Wait, why do birds not exist?
Oh, haven't you heard that? Some guy started a birds aren't real conspiracy theory as a joke, like they're just drones, surveillance drones for the government. And then a bunch of people thought it was a really funny joke, and then of course a bunch of people didn't know it was a joke, and they were susceptible to conspiracy theories. And so now there's like two contingents of this conspiracy uh like kind of like it's gotten to floating spaghetti monster levels. Like there are some people that know that this was made up to fuck with people, and then there are some people that legitimately believe that the flying spaghetti monster is a thing.
Wait,
You know?
really?
I know it.
Yeah. Come on,
Oh
think of
boy.
every other absolutely batshit thing we do, and then oh, that's gonna surprise you. That's surprising you.
I guess so.
That's what crossed the line. Everything that you know about people on a daily basis, and that's where the surprise comes in.
I mean, I guess like this is how do I put this? Like it's the only time where I've got to like cleanly see half of the equation without seeing the other half. Like normally they're both at least kind of visible. I don't know.
Right. They're super blurry, and so it's hard to discern like where sanity ends. It's the markings of a good conspiracy theory. Um
Also sounds like it's about time to stop the recording.
oh no, come on. This would be fun. Let's make it a game. You get 1 point per convert. Double points if they actually believe it. Winners will be announced
Do
in
we
a month.
have to drill holes in people's heads to let the
Well,
magnetic
I
fields
mean,
in?
I mean, it does make sense that if the government has hijacked the magnetic waves and the radio waves to interfere with your brain, that trepanation might be one of your only options. Okay, by the way, this is all a joke. If there are any like people who have okay, this is a joke. Everyone remember that this is a joke. Do not poke holes in your head, okay? Everybody already has some holes in their head. They grew there on their own. You don't need more.
Yeah, I was just near the pillar drill as well.
Yeah, I know. But hey, okay, it's the internet. I think you know what? I've seen people that I thought were completely normal go do really not sane things. So That is the disclaimer. All of this conspiracy theory shit is bullshit. I made it up yesterday because I thought it was really hilarious. Do not self-trepanate or get a friend to trepanate. Don't do that either. Only be trepanated by a professional for actual medical reasons. Because that is a thing, actually. But yeah, we
Yeah, I
can
don't.
probably, unless anybody has more questions that don't have to do with the conspiracy theory, but actually have to do with the paper, we can stop the recording. Yeah.
Okay, just a heads up. My recording is probably going to be like missing large gaps because my computer kept disconnecting.
Awesome.
Well, the bot should have caught it all.
Yeah, the bot should have got it. I guess we'll find out. You know, we're resourceful people. We can do it. So yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk about why the deep state is